Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Richard. How are you? How was the week?
Busy week, all good stuff. Lots of fun things going on in the world. How about you?
So many AI stories, so many things happening. It's been an exciting week. I'm looking forward to going over the news for this week.
Yeah, let's dive right in. So lots of stuff happening overseas. Let's talk about some of the AI news stories that are coming out of Europe and the UK. The thing that we should probably point out first is that the US and the UK have announced a partnership on AI safety, which is a big topic that we're going to be talking about a lot today. Let's hear what they have to say about that.
I'm excited to see this. The collaboration that you're seeing between these two main countries is important. And they're doing it along the boundaries of AI safety first. And I think
Mhm.
that speaks a lot to the importance of AI safety moving forward. And they have also committed that this won't just be between the US and the UK. They ultimately are planning to do this with other countries. I am curious as to why they decided to start with an individual nation effort versus maybe something at like the United Nations level.
Mhm.
But it's something to be commended. They are going to be sharing resources. They're going to be working on red teaming and establishing safety precautions for certain open source models together. So look forward to seeing this story develop. Of course, both countries have their own safety requirements and measures. The UK really being a couple steps ahead with their regulation. But I think this is a step in the right direction and it's going to set a precedent for more countries to join on in the coming months and the coming years.
Yeah, let's stay on this topic for a while. You've got some other stories here around, integrations. We've got Google.org committing some money. What's going on at that kind of, let's call it the governance level?
What I like about what Google is saying here, they actually put out a roadmap, and this is geared towards developing nations, especially, for example, countries in Latin America, the Middle East, and in Africa. And they're talking about how you can leverage AI. And so, if you think of what Google did over the last few years, they initially had a report called, I think, the Digital Sprinters, and it was
Mm,
all about digital technology and digital adoption. And now they have branched out a specific report called AI Sprinters.
mhm.
And the idea is if they can empower countries to figure out how they can leverage AI, it's a win for them, but it's also a massive win for countries. And of course, within the report, they're talking about things like infrastructure, which would require resources from Google. But they're also committing a lot of money to AI literacy, to training and development of technologies within these countries. And so that $5 million is going to be focused specifically on AI skills training. But outside of that, they have also committed a lot of money to different nonprofit efforts across different countries. So
Mm.
looking forward to seeing this. They highlighted examples of how AI is already being used in some of these countries to innovate, to help with fixing things like traffic. So some basic things that AI isn't being used to solve necessarily in developed countries today, you're going to see opportunities for them to leverage AI in these developing nations.
Yeah, it's great. We've often seen this happen before, and these countries get to leapfrog these developed nations with their new technologies because they don't have to rely on their existing infrastructure. They can just build brand new infrastructure. We saw that with cell phones. We saw that with satellite television, where you don't have to worry about what's in the ground, what's being buried. You can just go straight to wireless. I'm heading off to Spain next week, so love to hear more about what the Spanish are doing. Apparently, they've got a big plan.
I'm sure that's going to be a great trip, by the way. So, what Spain is doing is interesting for a number of reasons. They're partnering with IBM to advance their national AI strategy. And I'm going to call it a couple of things here. One, they're looking to develop their own language models, both large language models and small language models that are proficient in Spanish and also the co official languages. So, if you think of Catalan or Basque or Galician, they're going to be developing models that are trained on this sort of data rather than a model that's trained primarily on English and then has multilingual capabilities. And this is a big deal. One, because Spanish is the second most spoken language in the world. You're going to be opening up this technology to a wide range of people. And that is massive. But also you're seeing something that's interesting here. This is one of the few countries where you're seeing a partnership at the government level. Think of it, you're not seeing the UK or the US or many other nations establishing a national AI strategy where they themselves are saying, we're going to develop this technology. And here in Europe, you're seeing where Spain is going out and saying, hey, you know what? we're going to establish this partnership and we're going to develop this technology. And I think what that means then is that you're going to have this available to more people, that, and it could be open source, but it could be regulated at the government level. And so it will be interesting to see how they're positioned alongside all the countries in Europe, but also other Western countries moving forward with their AI strategy.
Yeah, it's very cool. I like to see these partnerships. NVIDIA have got an interesting partnership with Southeast Asia. As we know, India is the sleeping giant, definitely one of the countries to watch, as maybe the ascendancy of China has kind of reached a plateau. India is showing up to be the nation to watch, always been technically leaning into these interesting topics like AI. So, what do we expect to see from NVIDIA and Southeast Asia?
What I like seeing here over the last few months, we have seen a lot of conversations with Jensen Huang. He visited India, he was with the prime minister, and you saw a lot of work that they're doing in that country. But one of the countries that you don't tend to hear a lot is Indonesia. And this announcement, they're going to be building an AI center, a $200 million AI center, is going to have their latest Blackwell chips, and that's going to be a big deal for the region. And they're partnering with Indosat. They're the second largest telecom operator in the region. And one thing to note, once you start digging into the numbers, Southeast Asia is a massive market, as you said, for NVIDIA. In their last earnings, Southeast Asia accounted for 15% of the company's revenue. That's nearly $3 billion that's coming from Southeast Asia alone. And so it makes sense for NVIDIA to establish these partnerships, to invest in the region, and to ensure that they can have the technology available once these nations are looking to expand their infrastructure and to build out solutions.
Amazing stuff. Let's stick with safety and security. This is obviously an important topic, something that I think we care about, especially from a literacy point of view. We both are parents and we both think about this a lot. Tell us a little bit about what both Meta and Anthropic are doing, because there have been some really interesting, let's say, breakthroughs this week.
Okay, I'll start with Meta because their announcement was more of policy guidance requirements. If you think of the last few months as we've seen more synthetic and AI generated content on social media, there's a lot of misinformation happening. I get so many videos or articles, and I have to send back a message to the person saying, hey, this is AI generated, right? And they have no idea. And so over the last few months, Meta has been kind of struggling to figure out where they should land in terms of either removing AI generated content or labeling it or setting requirements for individuals uploading this content. And after doing a review of their initial policies that were rolled out, they have decided that they're going to establish a made with AI label. And they're going to add that to any AI generated content that they're seeing, either ones that they detect automatically or if somebody indicates that it's AI generated. And
Mhm.
so this is all about establishing trust and transparency with the user or the viewer of that content so that they know, hey, this is AI generated. Maybe it's a meme, maybe it's for clarity or it's inaccurate. And so that way the user can know that it's AI generated. And especially in an election cycle, with so many elections happening globally this year, this is
Mhm.
going to be an important point for them to enforce.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I want to hear about Anthropic's jailbreaking story, because this is a little bit more nefarious.
Yes. And this is really where I think we need to start paying attention to the flaws and the faults within models. And one of the things that Anthropics is really good at is taking the time to do really deep research in terms of safety and security of models. And if you go back over the last few months, you have seen them publish research paper after paper, just highlighting issues that they have found with their own models and with other publicly available models like GPT-4 and Gemini. And they share this openly with the rest of the community so that ultimately we can improve
Mhm.
and figure out solutions to this. This security issue is called many shot jailbreaking. And so, what they've recognized is as models have increased their context length, and the context length is the amount of data that a model can kind of take in at a time, right?
Mhm.
And as models like Claude 3 and Gemini 1.5 expand their context length to hundreds of thousands and now millions of tokens, there is an opportunity where you can basically give a model multiple examples, like of examples of a prompt and a response, and use that to basically train the model in real time before you ask them something that's nefarious. And the
Mm.
model will, of course, provide the answer. And so this is a big deal because they don't have a good solution for it. For example, one solution could be maybe modifying the prompt. So if a user requests information that shouldn't be allowed, they could modify that prompt when it's being sent over to the model. But of course, that's not really the best solution because people want to know that the prompt that they're asking their models is what the model is actually getting versus something
Mm.
that's modified by the company. And the second is to try to do fine tuning to establish guardrails. But what they've realized is that even with guardrails, it's only a matter of time before the model ultimately learns from these different examples that they're being provided before
Yeah.
the prompt. And so they're really opening this up to the community. They have put in certain restrictions within their models. They have reached out to like Gemini at Google and for OpenAI's GPT-4 to ensure that they are aware of this issue also. But again, these are some of the flaws within existing models that companies will need to be aware of as they're putting these out into the products and services that users have access to.
Yeah, I think what people need to realize is that LLMs are just like human beings in the sense that they are learning machines. And the more you brainwash that learning machine, the more likely you are to get the answer you can expect. So, this jailbreaking is very much like brainwashing. If you repeat the same propaganda over and over again, or whatever the input is, you are going to get those responses. As a friend of mine who used to work in the special forces used to say, junk in, junk out.
There was somebody on social media this week that when I shared this story on LinkedIn, they spoke about there's just this massive psychology area that is
Mhm.
opening up for AI that potentially will need exploring. And one day you could have like an entire field dedicated to the area of AI psychology.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing this as well. Anthropologists, psychologists, content creators, and designers, people like us who've got kind of a varied background. As you know, I studied biology. These are the kind of people that are interesting to AI because we're literally creating another version of ourselves, and we need to understand ourselves better in that context.
Exactly.
The next big theme that we need to cover this week is AI is no longer just for the consumer who's trying to make interesting pictures for their social media feed. Enterprise has dived deep into this. I know that as somebody who works within an organization who uses some of these tools at the enterprise level, this is really important, right? So these are where you're going to see big investments in terms of money and time and training. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in the enterprise world.
100% agreed, Richard. So I think you'll see different perspectives on adoption of AI in the enterprise. And I think there are a couple of things that listeners need to consider. One, the adoption time and implementation time within the enterprise, you're talking 6 to 12 months. And so, yes, last year you didn't see a lot of products. This year you're starting to see that roll out. But over the next 12 months, expect to see a lot more adoption of these technologies within the enterprise. The first story I'm going to highlight is from OpenAI. And this was impressive because they released some numbers this week. In January, they had 150,000 enterprise users.
Mm-hmm.
And today they have over 600,000. So their numbers have quadrupled in the matter of 3 months, which
Yeah,
is
one quarter.
amazing. And because of that, they have also learned a lot in terms of how enterprise customers are using ChatGPT and their other models. And they're making changes. So they're expanding their custom model offerings. And a custom model basically is when OpenAI will build a special version of ChatGPT, for example, for your organization. It's grounded with your jargon, with your requirements. Companies like Harvey have used this and they prefer the custom model 92% of the times versus the default model. And so
Okay.
you're going to see a lot of adoption for this from enterprises. They're also releasing a bunch of fine-tuning API improvements. So they're now providing assisted fine-tuning. And so for companies that want to do additional fine tuning, they'll be able to work with OpenAI to get that done. And they're also improving the dashboard so you can do a lot more. And so this is basically them building out the tooling that is required. And so it's great that OpenAI is focused on a lot of these right now.
Was OpenAI specific about how enterprises are using their tools?
They didn't dive into the specifics, but they did highlight the fact that a lot of these are from their enterprise version of ChatGPT, which is separate from the paid Teams version of ChatGPT
Hmm.
or even the free version of ChatGPT. These bring an additional layer of safety and security, but also access to more advanced features. And so those are the customers that they're seeing a massive increase in. And that doesn't come cheap. So the one thing that we're certain is that they're bringing in a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Enterprises are a little less price sensitive. Let's just put it that way. But not to be outdone, Microsoft has also been hard at work to do give the enterprise what they need. What are you seeing with Microsoft?
It's really interesting the dynamic that you have here because, of course, Microsoft is the largest investor in OpenAI and they're making a massive enterprise push. And so you have OpenAI really building out their tooling for enterprise, but you're seeing that also from Microsoft. And Microsoft is really good at enterprise software. And
Yeah.
so what they've done, they have added a bunch of features that just make it easier for developers that are looking to leverage Azure OpenAI to build models and solutions. They announced a bunch of features that I think are really important. One is called prompt shields. And prompt shields allows you to block and detect jailbreaking both direct attempts and indirect prompt injection attacks. So if you think of the story that we mentioned with Anthropic saying, hey, you have this many shot jailbreaking solution, prompt shields from Microsoft could potentially be an opportunity for them to detect that, hey, users attempting to jailbreak the model and put up a block for that. They have also announced groundedness detection, and that basically will identify anytime it thinks the model is hallucinating and flag it. And again, what do enterprises want? They want to ensure that they can trust what is coming out of the LM. And so the fact that they're starting to put in a parameter that can say, hey, I'm not sure that the model is actually sourcing this from somewhere that it should, I think that's a big deal. And overall, they're adding additional safety system requirements like messaging templates so users can quickly know and understand what's happening with the model, and also automated risk evaluations. And so using AI itself to do a lot of the testing and giving feedback to developers. So overall, a bunch of small features that I think developers will really appreciate and that will make Azure AI Studio really appealing for a lot of companies.
Yeah, Oracle as well. And Oracle is another massive enterprise player, both at the back end, and also we've seen them providing a lot of tools on the front end. Retail uses almost exclusively their tools to manage point of sale and things like that. They're the kind of the engine behind that. What are we seeing from Oracle?
Yeah, so over the last few months, again, we've seen a few announcements from Oracle partnering with a bunch of big companies that don't want to necessarily have their data stored in an AWS or a Google Cloud, but also from the big companies that need support with like the servers because they just can't manage the capacity
Mm.
because everyone right now is trying to get their hands on these GPUs and on AI chip technology. And so Oracle is finding that they're getting easy customers right now. They've partnered with Palantir that provides a lot of AI services, especially to government, and they're going to be moving all of Palantir's Foundry offerings, their AIP offerings over to Oracle Cloud. And that means government agencies that are using Oracle can quickly access this AI technology now, but also a lot of retail companies that will depend on Oracle can now have access to all of the AI technologies that Palantir offers. So a win-win for both companies, but you're seeing where a smaller player like Oracle in the grand scheme of things compared to like an AWS or an Azure is also seeing a lot of growth just because of the sheer number of customers that are interested in AI technology today.
Well, if enterprises aren't that price sensitive, um, governments are even less so. So I think this might be more of a margin play than anything else.
Yep.
Um, Probably the most exciting news in this kind of section that we're covering in enterprise is Command R. Is it Command R plus? Is that how they describe it? Cohere's.
Yes, so this is Command R plus, and
Yeah.
a few weeks ago we actually covered Command R, which we thought
Mm-hmm.
was an impressive model. This is a model from Cohere, and you don't often hear from Cohere. They fly under the radar, but they're one of the largest AI labs outside of your OpenAIs and your Anthropic. I would say they may, and DeepMind being a part of Google, I would say you'd have Cohere in the mix. And they have a bunch of different models that enterprises will love. And this new model, Command R Plus, is a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
Hear me out. 104 billion parameters. So this isn't a small model, it's a pretty comprehensive size model. It probably cost them a lot to build this model. It's multilingual in 10 languages. So for enterprise users, most of the languages that they would be interested in covering initially, you'll be able to have the model operate in. It has built-in retrieval augmented generation. And so this means that at default, if you're asking the model questions, it will cite its sources and say, hey, this is where I got it from. And so if you're an enterprise company and you're saying, I want a model that will be grounded in our company's data, this will make it super easy for you to use. It also comes with function calling and tool use. So it can go out and use any other tool via an API. And that is amazing. But the kicker is that it is much cheaper than GPT. It's much cheaper than Claude. It's much cheaper than Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you're going to see where a lot of enterprise companies will need to do a hard left turn and say, hey, should we be looking at Command R Plus for our enterprise offerings? Even if you're using a mix of models, it's likely that Command R Plus will be one of those that you want to consider for certain use cases. But what's amazing is that Microsoft has established a partnership with Cohere where they will get first access to distributing this. So this is already available on Microsoft Azure. If you log into your Azure AI Studio, you'll see the Command R models and you're able to select them and start working with them immediately. And so you're seeing here where one, Microsoft recognizes that they're not just going to commit to OpenAI and the GPT-4 models. They have other models like Command R from Cohere that they'll be offering to their users. Of course, it will be available on Oracle and AWS eventually, but for now, it's starting with Microsoft Azure. So if you're an enterprise user, I encourage you definitely go and check out Cohere. If you're just a customer and you're thinking, hey, I wanted to try this, you can go to the article. We have embedded multiple links. You can use Cohere's Playground to quickly use it. And while you're using it, you can also attach your files and ground the chatbot with the files that you want and see how it responds, see how you feel about using it. It's free. And also you can use Hugging Face where you can find access to the files and additional information that they have provided.
Chris, I've got a question for you. Do you imagine that the future that we're working towards is that the Microsofts and all these big platform companies ultimately become like the App Store, where others can then partner and bring their technologies and allow these large, established, installed enterprise models to support almost like an App Store type environment where companies can come along and say, "Hey, we want to add these things," just like you would go to the App Store in your Apple experience or Azure experience.
I think that is likely, and it's you're starting to see that already. And I'll point out a couple of examples. First, let's establish some context. You had a platform as a service that came out once. You had big companies realize that, hey, you know what, we can provide a platform for other companies to build on top of, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had infrastructure as a service where like Amazon said, hey, we'll use our servers and rent it out to people so you could just get your storage and
Mm-hmm.
your infrastructure from them so you don't have to worry about maintaining it. Of course, you had software as a service where companies said, we'll just build tools and we'll license it out for people to use.
Mm-hmm.
What you're going to start seeing is this new era called model as a service, where companies are not going to be interested in managing and maintaining and doing further development on their AI models themselves. It
Mm-hmm.
will make more sense for this to sit at the infrastructure layer. Why?
Yep.
Because again, we talked about the fact that these require a lot of maintenance, they require a lot of chips, a lot of electricity. And so it's going to be cheaper to do this at scale versus on an individual level. And you're seeing a couple players that are popping up that are really interesting. Of course, all the big infrastructure companies are looking to take advantage of this, but even companies like NVIDIA that
Mm.
initially were only focused on chips at their last conference, they spent a lot of time talking about NVIDIA NIMs. And these were pre-packaged, pre-contained software that you could download that would have intelligence built right into them. And this could be an entire model, or it could be something very specific, maybe computer vision. And so you're going to start seeing, as you're saying, this almost sort of app store feel to these companies where you can just take a very specific function that you want from an AI and leverage it within your tooling. And of course, NVIDIA has this vision of the future of software being developed using tools like NIMS, where you're taking all of these different pieces and you're pulling them together to bring in the functionality and the intelligence that you want in your models.
Yeah, very, very cool. Interesting space to watch.
Exactly.
Couple of new models this week, Stability AI, and then something from Apple, which is, I'm not sure you would call it a model, but it's definitely like a something worth noticing.
True. So, really big story from Stability AI with their Stable Audio 2.0. Now, when it comes to audio generation with AI, there are a couple players. Like you have Suno, which is
Mhm.
available in Google Gemini, but it's also available as a standalone app. And it does a fantastic job of generating lyrics and also creating music. Meta has a couple models. Google has Music FX, and you can try that in their AI Kitchen Studio. But what you have with Stable Audio is a standalone platform that is built on licensed, it's trained on licensed content. And that's going to be a big deal for creators that have been very sensitive to how other models have been trained on just free or accessible information on
Mhm.
the internet. If you're using Stable Audio, you can rest assured that it was only trained on that licensed content, and you can use it commercially if you want. You can get your license as you generate your content. What's exciting about this 2.0 version is that one, you can generate clips up to 3 minutes. So if you think of stock audio that you might want to use in a video, and you can describe it clearly, the instruments that you want, the pacing that you want, you
Mhm.
can specify all of these, and the model is a lot more true to the prompts now. But you also have something called audio to audio. So you could hum something that you're thinking of creating. You could start with a bass track and then expand it to something that you're looking for. Overall, it's a very fun model to use. If you haven't checked it out, head on over to Stable Audio's website and play around with it. It's really fun to see what can be created with AI. And there are a lot of times when people think, oh, AI can't do this or AI can't do that. It's just exciting to see how things like stock audio sound effects will someday be replaced by AI.
Yeah, beatboxes unite. Get very excited.
The second story I wanted to highlight, you mentioned MobileCLIP. It's new research from Apple. And what we have seen with Apple is that they're really focused on AI on their devices. So think of AI on your phone, AI on
Mhm.
maybe your Vision Pro. They're not as focused on these big chatbots that will run on a server. They want to have the privacy and the speed, the low latency of models that will be running on device. And
Mhm.
MobileCLIP is basically a mobile version of the clip model that was released by OpenAI a couple years ago. And this is really a lot of computer vision. So if you show it an image, can it identify what's in the image, what's happening in the image? And the MobileCLIP is able to do that on device, and it's able to outperform the clip model that's running on a desktop. And so this is amazing. It means that, for example, Siri in the future will likely be able to see and understand what's on your screen. And so if you have a screenshot up, or if you're looking at something on your screen, maybe you're going to be seeing where Siri will be able to have a lot more context of that and will be a lot more intelligent overall as an on-device AI.
Hmm.
An amazing breakthrough from Apple. You're seeing a continued progression of their research. They're not very vocal about what they're doing, but they have a machine learning website that you can go to, and you'll be able to see all the research that they're publishing on there.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, maybe that'll help me answer some of the questions that my 8-year-old has for me. What's this, Dad? The We always end in talk about money and how it's flowing into AI. Lots and lots of stories here. Probably, and the most interesting one, just from the point of view of you and I both coming from the design world, is that Sam Altman and Jony Ive are doing something together. What could they possibly be doing?
Yeah, Richard, we touched on this last year when the story first broke. There were rumblings, rumors that, hey, Sam is working with Jony Ive. They're thinking of this AI device and they're looking to start a company. And at the time, they were having conversations with the CEO of SoftBank. And we don't know if they're still involved in the conversations today, but we do know that they're looking to raise money. So a lot
Mm,
has happened over the last few months and the company is progressing. It doesn't have a name as yet, but we do know that it's not going to resemble a traditional smartphone. And so, if we think of maybe the Humane AI Pin or the Rabbit R1, those could give us some hints as to what this device could look like. But it's going to be at this intersection of maybe ambient computing, but also a really personalized device with intelligence built in. We do know that Sam is an investor in the Humane AI Pin, right? And so that could be an indicator as to what he's thinking. But of course, with Jony Ive's background in product design and product leadership and Sam's vision, this could turn out to be a game changer. They're looking to raise $1 billion, and they're
that's their seed
already,
round.
of course, seed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, you have a bunch of like blockbuster venture capitalists that are already looking to capitalize on this. Thrive Capital, they're one of the big investors in OpenAI. They actually just invested, they bought, I think, $1 billion worth of shares in the last few months. And now OpenAI is valued at $86 billion. You also have Emerson Collective, and that's a VC firm founded by Laureen Powell Jobs, the late Steve Jobs' wife. And so you're seeing big names actually having conversations with Sam. And the other thing I should say is that we don't know if he's doing this on behalf of OpenAI, if OpenAI will have an ownership stake in the company, or if this is just him. We know that Sam is now looking at a bunch of different ventures. You have the chip venture where they're looking to manufacture AI chips. You
Yeah.
have him with his crypto venture with WorldCoin. He's obviously invested in a bunch of other startups, but we'll see how this plays out. But in any case, a partnership between Ive and Altman could be very interesting for the space.
Mm. Yeah. What could possibly go wrong? Speaking of going wrong, one of the things that has emerged is that salaries for people in the AI space, especially engineers, they've gone through the roof. You've been telling me that there are salaries ranging upwards of 1 million and more.
Yep.
And companies like Tesla are actually experiencing this firsthand because their talent is being poached. Tell us what we can expect to see. And for those of you listening, trying to get into the AI space, what should you be considering?
Last week we had some initial rumblings of the lens that companies were going to attract AI talent. We saw where Meta, where CEOs like Zuckerberg were emailing candidates himself personally, talking about why they should come and work at Meta. They weren't requiring them to do interviews. They were just hiring them straight out of like a conversation, no interviews or anything. If you had people that were looking to leave and demanding a higher salary, there was a long-standing practice for them not to meet those demands, and no, they will say yes, we'll agree to your increased salaries. And yeah, I was saying earlier, you have starter researchers within the AI space at these labs demanding 1 million to 2 million salaries. And I thought that was like bonkers until I heard that there were also senior researchers at Google, at OpenAI, that were being promised 5 million to $10 million in terms of salary and compensation overall. So there is a lot. Tesla this week was in the news because Elon said they are increasing the salaries across the board for their AI engineers because they're being poached all over, especially by OpenAI. One of their lead engineers on their Tesla Vision team was being poached by OpenAI. They were able to retain them at their new X.AI company. It was either them leaving Tesla to go to OpenAI or them being accepted at X.AI for a much larger salary. And Brad Lightcap, the COO of OpenAI, acknowledged the competitive landscape. They say it's a crazy just marketplace today, and they have never seen anything like this. So if
Yeah.
you're thinking of career planning, whether you're a student in college, you're thinking of your future, or you're already working and you're thinking, okay, what comes next? I would say certainly look how you can leverage AI within your domain, within your space, add it to your skill set to see if that will give you a competitive edge in the future, in the coming months. It could mean a couple $100,000 extra. It could mean millions of dollars extra.
Yeah, well, certainly it won't be sustainable. So I think the cautionary note here is while this might be happening right now, it's unlikely that these companies will be able to sustain those kinds of salaries. So probably seen closer to the signing bonus end of the spectrum versus,
Hmm.
hey, this is going to be your salary for the next 10 years. Or maybe, as we said, those are packages. They're getting, significant amounts of equity in these fast growing companies. But either way, um, prepare uh, and be aware of these things, but at the same time, understand that that's a kind of a crazy space to be in. Having grown up during the dot com and having a business during that time, or multiple businesses actually, um, same thing happened, and of course, it wasn't sustainable, and the bubble does have to pop eventually. Let's talk about some of the other stuff. We've got, well, so many here. I don't even know where to start. Do you want to start with Higgsfield? That's probably the coolest one, just from a visual point of view.
We do have a bunch of companies this week that raised money, and you'll be able to, again, go to Maginative.com and you'll see all of these stories. But I'll quickly touch on a few of them. Higgsfield, they raised an $8 million seed round. They're out of stealth and they're an AI video startup. And so they're generating video. Of course, they're going to have to compete with players like Runway, with OpenAI, with their Sora model. And they're trying to differentiate themselves by doing a couple of things. One, they're focusing on mobile. And so they released a mobile app called Diffuse. And they're also focused on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And this may be a really interesting differentiator because they're just really thinking, hey, rather than trying to replace video editors and massive productions, let's make it fun. Let's create an app that will allow users to quickly take a picture of themselves and create videos from it, create memes from it. And so we'll see what adoption looks like. But it's still early days. But it's exciting to see startups really take on that challenge.
It's a good strategy. I mean, we've seen Canva do the same thing when they entered into the space, when Adobe and Figma were the big players, the big kind of the monster packages. And Canva came in and said, hey, you can do like 80 to 90% of what these things can do, and you can do it without any skills.
Exactly. Of course, we know chips are going to be super important for
Mhm.
the future of AI training and inference. And so you're seeing companies that are looking to work at the edge. And by the edge, we mean on device. So on your phones, on your in your cars, in your smart devices at home. And you have SiMa.ai. They raise an additional 70 million. I think they're now up to $270 million. And they're looking to bring their proprietary chips to the edge. They're in drones, they're in a bunch of different tools. And so we keep a track of them. You have Hailo that raised $120 million, and they're looking to develop chatbots and copilots again at the edge that can be run locally without a lot of the latency that you'd need to go to a server and back. And so I think it's always exciting to see these companies pop up. Of course, they have to compete against the big players like the NVIDIAs, the ARMs, the AMDs, the Qualcomms of the world. But it's also a case where if they're innovating, it could be an exit for them where
Right.
companies will look to adopt their technology and potentially acquire them. And so it's interesting to see and exciting that you're still seeing innovation at the chip level and knowing that as crazy as the numbers are around NVIDIA, you still have companies that are coming out with chips and solutions that will ultimately compete against them. Of course, it's not just about the chip at this point, it's about the entire ecosystem. But the
Yep.
technology that's being developed at the chip level will be certainly impressive for these startups.
And I think it's just a sign of a healthy economy when you've got, say 20 or 30% of the the market being these small, innovative, experimental companies. That's always been a sign, both ecologically and also within technology, that there is some health there. If we've got one player demanding all the money and all the technology, we're going to have some kind of stagnation eventually. So it's important that we have these smaller players coming in and testing the boundaries and maybe just looking for some of those edge cases.
Exactly. And the last startup that I want to just highlight is Archetype. Archetype AI, they emerged from stealth this week, $13 million seed funding, and they're building a large behavior model. It's a foundation model for understanding the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
And they released a model called Newton. And basically, what they're saying is, hey, you have all of these sensors in the world. How can we take these sensors, all of this data coming from sensors, and build a model that you can interact with the physical world with? And so I think this will be interesting. They have so many different demos that help you to rethink what interactions with devices could look like, how these devices can have access to more data that they're pulling in from the world from sensors. And so they're one of the companies that I'm looking at and just really intrigued by what the ultimate outcome will be in terms of their products, their users, their addressable market. But overall, so many companies in different spaces raising money. It's a healthy, maybe too healthy sometimes, funding environment for companies. But it's always interesting when you see companies that are not just saying, hey, we're a new AI startup for X, but you see companies innovating at the hardware level, at the infrastructure level, at the implementation level.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think also those types of industries that have been around for a long time, the Internet of Things, the RFID chips, the crypto people, these organizations and the infrastructure plays that they've been working on for decades now finally are starting to get a tooling set that allows them to reach out into the universe that we've always wanted them to. So yeah, it's interesting to see this. There are a lot of there was a big crypto conference recently where they were talking about how AI is actually the thing that's going to save them. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's true, but yeah, there's some interesting ways to see how this stuff all gets connected.
Yep, agreed. And with that, I think that wraps up all the stories that we have time to cover this week. Again,
Mhm.
if you're a new listener, head on over to Maginative.com. We cover at least 5 stories to 10 stories per day. So there are lots of stories that we didn't get to touch on this week, stories from OpenAI, other startups that you'll probably be interested in looking at. But overall, just thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for listening in. If you want to get additional information, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to or Maginative Plus plan, and it's just $10 per month. But it one supports the work that we're doing, but it also helps you to get additional information deeper than just the story level. And so, if you want to dive deep with us, definitely check out Maginative Plus. But also hit us up on YouTube. Leave a comment below, like the video, subscribe here on YouTube if you want to get notified every time a new video drops. And so, with that, Richard, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's always great chatting with you.
Thanks, Chris. I'll be away next week, but the following week we'll both be in Boston at the Imagination in AI conference, which is hosted by a friend, John Warner, and you'll be speaking there. And so, yeah, please, if you're going to be in the Boston area and you can get to that conference, we'd love to meet you.
Yes, we're excited about that conference and looking forward to meeting everyone. All right, everyone, enjoy the weekend. As always, one love.
Bye bye.